Monica Smith. I am a registered dietitian, and I am your food and nutrition educator for Kent, Allegan, and Ottawa counties. And this month I want to talk to you about nutrition and aging, because within the next 40 years, the population of the United States that is over 65 is going to more than double, 2.5 times our population. But before we go on to that, I want to tell you that this is your federal tax dollars hard at work. This program is partially paid for by United States Department of Agriculture, SNAP-Ed. We do not discriminate against anyone, nor do we associate with those who do. Everyone is welcome in our programming, and we are specifically designed to reach people with lower incomes. I would like to say thank you to Dr. Noel, who started this presentation, and I sort of morphed it a little bit to be more friendly for our population, but she saved me a whole lot of work, and she was gracious enough to let me use it, so I always appreciate those folks. Well, and there's another reason I'm kind of concerned about nutrition and aging. All righty then. I got this in the mail about 30 seconds after I turned 50. And so, realizing that when I'm talking about nutrition and aging, I'm talking about nutrition and me and my friends and a lot of other people in the United States. And I don't really know how this happened. I was 18 last week, but here I am. And as I look at nutrition and aging, here's what we emphasize in a diet for people over age 70. Now, most of us are going to look at this and you're going to go, so what, right? I mean, does any of this look like rocket science here? High fiber, whole grains, dark green, orange, and red vegetables. Now, this is a new suggestion from the 2010 Dietary Guidelines for Americans. The whole fruits, low-fat dairy products, lean meats, some meatless main dishes, beans, grains, having adequate fluid and physical activity. Did that surprise anybody? No, but I promise you, I will give you a little something new as this goes on. But right now, this is not too much new, is it? Okay? Low to moderate intake of sugar, salt, and alcohol. Is that anything too new for anybody? Oh, FYI, people over 65 do drink. And you need to consider that when you're talking about nutrition and weight and substituting perhaps alcohol for whole food. You need to be thinking about that. Limiting foods in refined sugar, saturated fat, and cholesterol. Is anybody surprised yet? I told you, this is pretty average stuff. Now, I do want to call your attention to the salt up here, because for people over the age of 50, and I keep saying that like it's not me. We're working on it. For folks my age and older, I need to be holding my sodium intake to 1,500 milligrams a day. And I'm a healthy person. I have no heart problems. I'm healthy. I consider myself to be pretty vital. 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day is not much sodium. Probably one of our greatest challenges in caring for and feeding older people is going to be this salt thing. Okay, it's huge. It's huge. Now, some of this might be a little new. When we get older, B12, D, calcium, potassium, and fiber are of particular concern. Some of these nutrients affect us in ways we may not be aware of. Not to mention the fact that sometimes we don't take as much in. We don't eat as well when we're older. Sometimes our body doesn't process it as well. Sometimes medication that we take gets in the way of us using these. So, here is a concept. If you just leave with this one concept today and touch people with this concept, it will have been worth my time to be here. As we age, we need more nutrient, not less. More nutrient. And as we age and our body slows and we can eat fewer calories to maintain our weight, every bite we put in our mouth needs to be of a higher quality. Okay? We need more nutrient and less calorie. Now, I want to talk to you about these nutrients of concern and what it looks like when there's a deficiency. A lot of people will see these things these deficiency symptoms in our elders and not know what they're seeing or not question it because they look like other things. I could speak to you personally from the vitamin B12 situation. Last year, I was unable to lift 20 pounds. I was exhausted. I was having heart symptoms. I was bordering on terrible depression. And lo and behold, what was my problem? B12 deficiency. I thought I was having some kind of cardiac event. I went to a specialist. Imagine my surprise because I told somebody who specializes in gerontology that's what she found. What a cheap fix. I feel great again. Now, I'm a dietitian and I missed it. Do you imagine somebody else might miss it? When you're deficient in B12, fatigue, depression, forgetfulness, difficulty concentrating, even low-grade fevers, nausea, gastrointestinal symptoms, heartburn, weight loss. Does that sound like a lot of other stuff? A lot of complaints you hear from seniors? Believe it or not, a serum B12 is not a lab test that's done routinely. You might have to request it, okay? Heart problems. Look at this, loss of sensation in feet, unsteady gait, weakness, clumsiness. Has anybody ever known somebody over the age of 60 who has fallen and hurt themselves and then never been the same person ever again? We want to avoid falls, don't we? Really do. Look, would you have ever thought B12 could have contributed, perhaps, lack of it, to falling? Peripheral neuropathy, that's where your fingers and your hands tingle, you lose sensation. Weight loss. You need B12 to process things that go into the cycle to give us energy and to let us use our nutrient. I told you about the cardiac symptoms. This cognitive change, confusion. You know, normal aging doesn't necessarily mean you grow up and become confused. And this fatigue and lethargy, that may not be a normal symptom of aging in the people that you work with or that you care for. It could be B12. Let me go back a minute. As we age, our body has less ability to create B12. It has less ability to absorb B12. And if you're on any type of acid reducer for reflux, that also interferes with the acid necessary for B12 metabolism and transport. So that person is even more vulnerable. Ma'am?
What type of food has B12 in it?
I'll show you. There's a lot of different foods that have, well actually, I don't know if it's in this presentation, but there will be on the website a list of B12, D, calcium, places you can get it, okay? With vitamin D, if a person is deficient in vitamin D, now most of us are getting our vitamin D where? Sunlight, well, hopefully. If we're outside and our arms are showing or part of our legs are showing and we don't have on a bunch of sunscreen and we're not a very dark-skinned person, we may be getting our D from sunlight. A lot of us are getting it from milk, right? Do you know a lot of older people that don't drink milk anymore? Yeah. Do you know a lot of older people that don't go out in the sun anymore? Yes. Okay, let's think about this. Going back to falls, osteomalacia, this is not osteoporosis, this is a softening of the bone. And you might hear people complain of achiness, achy bones, being weak, muscle weakness is another thing with vitamin D. Blood pressure, there's some really good research coming out that links vitamin D deficiency and increased blood pressure. Blood sugar regulation, new research has come out showing that people that are deficient in vitamin D are at a much higher likelihood of having diabetes or improper blood sugar regulation, bordering on diabetes. What about depression? Mood and vitamin D there's all kinds of research being done right now to link mood, cognitive decline, and other brain function to vitamin D intake. Again, vitamin D, serum vitamin D, is not something that is routinely checked. You might need to think if perhaps a physician might want to check your elder that you're caring for. Calcium, this is where the difference is. D is malacia, calcium is porosis. This is when the bones break, they're weak and they break easily. A bump, a simple fall, bone loss. Tetany, which is cramping, twitching, sometimes spasms in the throat, that can make it really hard to eat too. This is not a real popular, or should I say a real likelihood, but these are very much. And again, we're back to blood sugar regulation. See why the USDA wants us to have more fortified dairy products? We can get the D, we can get the calcium in one fell swoop, right? Calcium is not easily found in foods that are not fortified. You have to eat a whole lot of them. So is D. Not easy to come across unless you're out in the sun. Potassium. I can guarantee you, if none of us in this room are taking a potassium supplement, if you eat a normal, typical American diet, all of us are sitting here potassium deficient. 4,700 milligrams a day, folks. I'll put the calcium chart on the website for you. It's a lot of potassium to get there. And when you don't have enough potassium, look what happens. Oops, wrong button. Look what happens. Anybody, you ever hear anybody older talking about swelling, their feet swelling, their fingers swelling? Well, maybe that has a little something to do with potassium. It messes with your fluid balance if you don't have enough. Now, when you don't have enough potassium, guess what happens? The calcium that you take in is not utilized as well, and your bones lose more calcium. The beauty of potassium is it sort of balances out sodium and can regulate some of the negative effects of sodium on the heart. So if you're eating a high sodium diet, you really don't want to be deficient in potassium. Impaired heart function, muscle contractions, lot of serious complications without potassium. And when you look, if you just worried about potassium, calcium, and D, you might help to reduce two of our biggest health risks, hypertension and bone loss in our senior community. If you only just focused on these three. That feels kind of doable, doesn't it? You have this big long laundry list of what you need to do to help our seniors, and it gets kind of overwhelming. Wow, D, calcium, and you can do you get a twofer here with fortified dairy products or fortified soy, right? Yeah. Fiber. Okay. Ever know anybody that's happy when they're constipated? No, never, never. I dare say 30% of grumpiness could be reduced in America if we all ate more fiber. Yeah, we might be a lot happier if we just ate more fiber. Might be lighter as well, you're right. Fiber, not only does it help move things through our system, it binds cholesterol and reduces it. Fiber can help with glucose regulation, and fiber helps people keep from overeating. The more fiber you eat, the fuller you are, the less you want. Fiber is a good thing. So when you're thinking about on one side of your head, I want you to be thinking about those nutrients. Now I want you to think about what is it that affects people, that keeps people from taking these nutrients in. And I think these are the top ones. Appetite, ability to feed yourself, chewing and swallowing, converting food to energy, problems with the musculoskeletal system, and elimination. Those things are influencing people. And I'm going to tell you some stories here because I met somebody on a plane who told me that the most effective presenter that they ever met was someone whose major was linguistics, and they believed that all learning was done through storytelling. And being from the South, and I come from a rich storytelling culture, I agreed. So I'm going to share some stories with you in this presentation. I'm going to tell you about Rachel here. This is actually my mother. Rachel eats a lot of cereal and sugary foods. She doesn't cook much anymore because it doesn't turn out right. She's thirsty most of the time, and she drinks a lot of sweetened tea, a lot of lemonade. Her back hurts, and she's afraid of falling. she's losing weight, and she doesn't have a whole lot of energy. Does this sound like anybody you know? Or let me show you this. When appetite is affected, these are some of the things that you might want to look at or think about. Decreased taste, decreased smell, inability to see. We eat with our eyes, right? If it doesn't look good, we may not eat it. Dry mouth, pain, these things that are bolded, these are actually true for the case of Rachel. She couldn't taste or smell. That's why she thought nothing that she cooked came out right, and everybody was like, oh, this is delicious. She was like, ick. She had back pain, and the medications for that back pain caused her mouth to be dry. So what did she need? What could we do for her? Well, what she needed was to be able to increase smell and taste of food, and oftentimes that can be a zinc supplement. Something as simple as a zinc supplement. If you know an elder who is not tasting and smelling, speak to their physician about a zinc supplement. Also, a medical review for drugs that increase dry mouth. There may be an alternative that does not cause dry mouth. Oral hygiene was not a problem, but it can be in this situation of appetite because taste changes. And adequate pain control. Has anybody ever been in a lot of pain, had a migraine, hurt themselves? Were you on your way to the refrigerator when you were in pain? No, of course not. So these are the things to consider when somebody is having an off appetite. Oh, I didn't mean to do that, but that's interesting. Oh, look, I'm fancier than I thought I was. Look at this. Wow, I'm good.
That's because you turned 50.
I impressed myself. See, when we get older, you can learn new tricks. I forgot I learned the trick, but it's still there, okay. Let's talk about this one, the ability to feed yourself. I want to tell you the story of Mark. And this I see over and over again. Mark trembles and he spills. He has trouble writing a list, so he just takes whatever his son will bring him. He gets Meals on Wheels, but he doesn't eat it. His wife passed away, and he really, really misses her cooking. He isn't much on eating out, and it's too expensive anyway. Medications are a real big expense for Mark. Does that person sound familiar? Yes. Decreased dexterity. If you can't get the food to your mouth, would that be a humbling experience every time you ate? Humbling, and a reminder every time you ate. Maybe I wouldn't eat if I had to remind myself of that loss. Decreased shopping and cooking abilities. He didn't even want to write a list and didn't really have the money to ask for specific things that he wanted anyway. And a lot of times our older friends and family don't want to ask, don't want to be in trouble. They want to say, well, actually, I'd really rather have zucchini. I don't really care for green beans. They'll try to be gracious and take what's given to them. And maybe Mark really needs occupational therapy. Sometimes a weighted spoon or another device or simply learning a trick can help people come to the table with more ease. Now, Mark didn't need family and community support as much. His family and community were on board for him. He was setting his own boundaries, though. But this gentleman could really use some help with food resources. We have a senior food pantry, and we have SNAP-Ed or food stamp benefits that are woefully underutilized by the seniors in our community. If Mark could free up his dollars for medications by using food resources, he may be able to feel better about choosing some of what he was getting to eat. Chewing and swallowing problems. This can happen just as a course of aging, but it can also happen after stroke or other illness, right? This is a hard one. Let me go back here. This is about Zelda. Zelda was big fun. I really enjoyed Zelda. I used to actually play cards with her at a senior facility. She was really good at poker. Zelda will not eat at the senior center, even though it's downstairs. She rarely accepts invitations to eat with friends or family, and when she eats alone, she eats poorly. Her mouth bothers her, and she tells me everything that she eats comes back to haunt her. Her clothes are starting to hang on her. This is a big problem for folks. Ill-fitting dentures. Large weight loss, large weight gain, bone loss, a lot of things can affect how dentures fit. The ones that you got 30 years ago might need an upgrade, but that requires money, right? And somebody to know that. Sometimes what goes along with ill-fitting dentures is sore mouth and thrush, or a yeast infection in the mouth. That makes it really hard to swallow, makes it really hard to taste things, doesn't feel good. Zelda really needs a dental referral, doesn't she? Does a referral get her to the dentist? No, that's a tough one, but one that's probably pretty important. Her physician could be of some help if every time she went, he or she took a peek in her mouth, right? Zelda didn't have problems swallowing. Dysphagia was not her problem. Dry mouth was not her problem. But these things do happen, and some seniors actually need a swallowing evaluation because something has gone wrong between here, and they no longer have the ability to swallow. The esophagus is a muscle. It works. It's not just a tube. And if it doesn't work well, you have problems swallowing. And again, this is another case where almost any time somebody says they have dry mouth or thrush, you want to do, or ask the physician to do a review of causes of dry mouth or sore mouth. Musculoskeletal, that's your muscles and your bones. So what's going on with Mary? Mary looks like a beach ball with arms and legs. Does that sound familiar? She tires easily, she's fair, and she's starting to look and act frail. She stays indoors, she takes a lot of naps, she thinks milk is for children, and it's too expensive anyway. She thinks milk goes bad quickly, she's not going to put her money into it. So right now, I'm telling you, if she's starting to look frail and act frail, she may not be putting on muscle, right? Or holding on to what she had at this point. My guess is, if she's not going outside and she's not drinking milk, what do you think the chances are of her getting enough calcium D? And she's probably lacking in potassium as well. Okay, has anybody ever tried to lead somebody to physical activity at any age? If you're not called to it, it's not an easy sell, is it? So telling Mary, hey, Mary, you gotta move more, probably isn't going to work. So Mary might need somebody to do something with her. And last but not least, you know, no dietitian is going to let you leave the room without talking about elimination. Okay? We just have to talk about elimination. And this is John. John was a hoot. He's an interesting case, though. He has frequent bouts of constipation and diarrhea. But you know what? He might be fine for days, he might be fine for weeks, but then it starts all over again. He feels bad, and when he feels bad, he relates that to eating. And so guess what? He doesn't eat, all right? He says nothing agrees with him. His doctors have told him he doesn't have IBS, he doesn't have any bowel disorder. But yet he's losing weight and withdrawing because he keeps having these periods of diarrhea and constipation. Well, we know as we get older, we have this increased likelihood of constipation and we have an increased possibility of diarrhea. But guess what John's problem was? Food safety. John was somebody that didn't like to throw things away. So they would come to his home and they would go into the refrigerator, undated, unlabeled, and he would eat them whenever. And John's refrigerator was a scary thing. So while all other avenues were being explored for his physical health, nobody bothered to say, hey, John, what's your fridge look like? Or to peek in on John's fridge. Food safety is probably a huge issue in the senior community for constipation and diarrhea. Whether it's food being left in too long, being left out on the counter too long, food being transported too long, refrigerators being cut down to save energy. living somewhere where the refrigerators are not very good. Have you ever tried to get onto a landlord for somebody you love because the refrigerator wasn't good? Oh my goodness, that's a difficult sell too. Now, if it hadn't been food safety, maybe John needed more fiber or fluid or physical activity. Maybe his physician needed to look at his medications and determine if he had multiple medications with a side effect of constipation. But you know, my guess is his physician probably did look at those things. And when they all came up negative, that's where it stopped. Because very rarely does anybody go here. Very rarely. Ned's converting food to energy, and he's not doing too good of a job of it because he's another one. Every time he eats, he feels worse. I hear this over and over and over again in our senior community. When he eats, his gut hurts, and he tells me, I find unhappiness in the restroom. I did not ask for him to elaborate. I trust him. Okay? His solution was to eat once a day and just be done with it. Maybe to eat some soup, maybe to eat some cereal. Right now his weight's okay, but he has become really, really inactive for lack of energy. Okay, we get older, guess what? Our metabolism slows. We just slow. That's part of normal aging. Our digestive tract also slows, so food in, the time we eat to the time we eliminate takes longer. And because of that, and maybe because of medications that we're on, and maybe because we eat a lot of sweets, because sweet is the last taste sensation to go. If you could taste nothing else, you could taste sweet.
Is that the whole top of the tongue?
Mm-hmm. You could taste sweet, and so maybe you're eating too much sweet, and because of that, you have this increased bacterial overgrowth in your GI tract. Something else that happens is because we're slowing down and we're eating more sugar, guess what? We're getting bigger. And sometimes our pancreas is not doing the job it used to do. It slows down and it's not making the enzymes it needs to make to help us break our food down. And when these things start happening, we really need to eat regular meals. There's nothing you can do to crush your metabolism quicker than to eat one meal a day. Frequent fueling your body will up your metabolism and make you feel so much better. I'm wondering if he needs to ask his doctor about probiotics. Probiotics are the good guys that come back and take care of these bad guys. They're available over the counter, they're a supplement, but a physician could tell him if maybe he could benefit from that. There are some brand name yogurts, which I will not mention because that would seem like I were promoting them, that include these. And yogurts, most yogurts have them anyway. You know, he's needing to move. Another way to raise your metabolism is to move. It takes energy to make. Did your mother ever tell you it takes money to make money? Yeah. That's true. And you know what else is true? It takes energy to make energy. If you want to feel like a sloth, just stay on the sofa. Absolutely. If you want to feel more vital, get up and move. It just happens to work like that. But that's really hard to do when you don't feel good and when you're not eating enough to have the energy to do it. Let me go back here. This gentleman may also need B12 monitoring because when you start to get lethargic, you start to have feelings like he's feeling that he's just not able to eat and feel good. He might need B12 monitoring, or somebody else might need lower fat meals. Fat stays in the stomach and in the gut longer than anything else, right? It's harder to break down and it's slower to metabolize. So, who's at risk? Just because you're 50 or 60 does not mean that you have this automatic risk factor for poor nutrition. But when you start combining these things together, you do. So how do you determine, I love this, Thank you, Dr. Noel. How do you determine that someone might be at risk for poor nutrition and needs further nutritional intervention or encouragement? Disease, eats poorly, tooth loss or mouth pain, economic hardship, reduced social contact, multiple medicines, involuntary weight loss or gain, needs assistance in self-care, or over age 80. You get about 3 of these, and you might have a problem. So, looking at this, the seniors that you come in contact in your life, or even you, if you happen to be someone over 50, 60, 70, are these things starting to be in your life? If that's the case, you might want to look to nutrition to make you feel better. Oh, I know this is tough. I have to keep saying it. We all keep saying it. We have to move more. We just have to move more. It increases your appetite, and it helps your body use protein and build muscle, builds strength and balance. It's in the millions and millions of dollars what we are going to be utilizing out of our healthcare system to treat osteoporosis. Millions and millions. And you know what? It feels good to be capable. To improve your mood and self-esteem, nothing feels better than being able to do something, right? Whatever that thing is, whether it's I shoot pool really good, or I can take a walk, or I can do X. And again, when you have a senior who is not doing well nutritionally, who is not well, who's losing ground, yeah, you might want to broach or consider broaching the alcohol question. We also need to understand that mood affects nutrition intake. If you're depressed, if you are anxious, you're not going to eat well. And telling someone, eat your greens, is not going to be helpful, right? The real problem here, the mood needs to be treated to get the food into the body, right? Yeah. And honoring independence is really important. Being given back the skills if we've lost them to feed ourselves, whether that's having enough money to buy our own food or at least ask for the foods that we like, or being able to feed ourselves, really important. Resources. Community resources. Anybody in here familiar with community resources in Kent County for seniors? We have so many. So many. We have a very good senior meals program. We have a senior food pantry. We have senior congregate meals. We have food pantries at most of our low-income senior housing. We have meals served at our low-income senior housing. Family and friends are welcome to join. The food is join-worthy. You would want to go and have a lunch with your friend or your family member. There's a lot of community resources that can help seniors in their home or at a center. This one, family members. Has anybody ever had a hard time? Let me put it like this. I went to a family gathering a few months ago, and I walked into the room, and there was someone there who had changed so drastically I did not recognize them. Has that ever happened to you? This person had lost so much weight and had become so frail, I didn't even know who she was. And to be able to take that to the family and say, is so-and-so okay? Is there something I could help her? It seems like she's lost a lot of weight. And sometimes the family will say, really? Because they see her every day. They've lived with her. They don't even realize. They don't understand that you're shocked. Yeah, she looks really so much smaller than she did before. I'm a little bit concerned for her. She looks a little weak. I notice she's not moving around as much. Really? And they're just shocked. And sometimes being able to talk to the family members about that and call their attention to it, and then they start paying attention and perhaps will move toward helping that individual. But they got to notice it, and it's hard to notice stuff in your own world sometimes. Caregivers. Helping caregivers understand that maybe cooking every meal and bringing it to the person is not all that helpful. It might be more helpful to cook with that person or to ask that person's input. Meals on wheels. Because the meals come to the senior, doesn't mean the senior needs to eat alone, right? Could you show up at the time of Meals on Wheels? Sure you could. Eating alone is hard. Who in here enjoys eating alone? How many people, when you eat alone, eat in front of a television to have company or read? Mm-hmm. Do you ever go to a restaurant and you see somebody eating alone and just eating and not reading? Don't you look at that person with awe and wonder? Like, wow, you are so self-assured. Look at you enjoying your dinner and engaging with the environment around you instead of, right? Hitting the book. It's really hard to eat alone. So helping caregivers understand, realizing that Meals on Wheels says, here, you're going to eat alone today. And changing that environment. Adult care programs and nutrition sites for older adults, those are wonderful opportunities if you can get the person to admit that they're older. I have a friend in Georgia. She is 82. This is the first year that she has gone to the senior center in her neighborhood. And the only reason that she's going, the draw-in, was trivia. They finally had something that she liked. She's made so many friends. She's eating so much better. She's so much more active. Thank goodness for trivia. But she didn't come for the food. She didn't think she was going for the fellowship. She thought she was going to prove to people, hey, I'm 82 and I am still sharp and I want all you people off my back. All right? When in reality, she got a lot more out of that. These are great sites. Congregate dining rooms. Again, you don't have to eat alone. Good food. Sit, talk, and there's lots of other activities combined with congregate dining rooms. And congregate's a hard word to go with meals, isn't it? Yes. Congregate. What does that sound like to you folks? It's a weird word, isn't it? Maybe we should call it community dining rooms. Okay? Community dining. Congregate sounds sort of like it's in the penal system or something to me. I don't know why.
Or like the church.
Or like the church. I don't know, but I think community or might be a little bit easier for people to digest. And food commodities and food stamps. A lot of food can come a senior's way through basic food programs. And I'll have a list of these on the website, resources for seniors. Now, here's the tough one. Depending on the age of the senior, depending on the situation, to get this person to eat well, so that their mood is improved, so that their bones are strong, so that they are perhaps less confused, so that their blood sugar is improved, so that their hypertension perhaps is under better control, so they have less risk of falling. It could take a village. Okay? It really can take a village. However, all of these folks may not need to be in the senior's life forever and ever. But realizing a single trip to the dentist can make a big difference in somebody's life. A speech therapist, dietitian, social services, food service manager. Food service managers don't want to see food going in the trash can. It upsets them, it hurts them, it makes them unhappy. They want to know how to make food more palatable, prettier, more appealing. Offer up suggestions. Sometimes a senior may need to see somebody about their mood, a psychiatrist, a counselor, clergy, to determine are they okay or not, and what do they need to have a mood such that they can eat well. Occupational therapy and physical therapy for pain, dexterity issues. Again, sometimes a small intervention will go a long way in making somebody feel better and able to take care of themselves. And last but not least, advocating for seniors to have medication reviews with their what? Doctors. Right? This is not back when my grandma was alive, when she had one doctor who she had had her whole life and knew everything about her. We live in an age of specialists, right? One doctor may not know what the other doctor is doing. The senior may not even have an up-to-date list of their medications. If you can advocate that each physician that the senior sees screens for drugs that have problems, compounding side effects for nutrition. In other words, dry mouth, constipation, diarrhea. Look for those medications and see if there are other alternatives. Sometimes there are, sometimes there are not. And that they're also screening for supplement use. I used to do Meals on Wheels many years ago in North Carolina. And sometimes, this was before I was a nutritionist, and even then, I would see the lineup on the table or on the counter of the supplements that people were taking, and it was kind of scary because you knew right beside them was all the medication they were taking too, and you thought, wonder if anybody knows this, that all of these plus all of these is what's going into her mouth, and I wonder if that's why she doesn't eat her lunch. Maybe she doesn't feel hungry anymore. That's got to make your mouth taste weird if you took all that. That's some of the things I was thinking. So understanding and encouraging the senior to include their supplements when they confide in their physician. So here it is in a nutshell. This is true for you, me, and people over the age of 60. Vary foods in the diet and be food safe. Tape and a marker can go a long way to a happy bowel, okay? A lot of fluids and a lot of fiber. If you increase somebody's fiber and you do not increase their fluids, they are not going to like you, okay? That just screams constipation. And have the senior's primary care physician screen for deficiency B12 and D especially, and consider supplements of calcium, D12, potassium, and zinc when necessary. Some of these things you're going to really have to ask for. They may not happen on their own. And in order to get someone to eat what they need to eat to stay healthy and to remain vital, some of these things really have to happen. Now I'm going to tell you about a missed opportunity. I'm going to leave you with one more story. This is about Maxine. This is somebody I loved, somebody that was very important to me in my life. She's 83, well, somebody I still do love, 83, living in her own home. Volunteering, driving, having a life. Lived a good, clean life her whole life. And then one day, she started feeling sick, and she started feeling sick. And she started getting diarrhea, and she didn't feel good, and this went on for days, and then it went on for weeks. And she got weaker and weaker and started losing weight. And then one night, in the middle of the night, she woke up with a start, and she needed to run to the restroom, and she did not make it. She fell. She broke her hip. She had to be rushed to the hospital via ambulance. And from that point forward, Maxine has never been the same person. She's afraid to live alone now. She's even more afraid of food than she ever was. Before, she had a great appetite. The physical therapy has been very hard on her. She no longer drives. And the problem with Maxine was food safety. When they looked at Maxine's refrigerator, when her daughter looked in there, she found many, many takeout containers, all of which, or any of which, could have been the culprit. But now, because of this fall, her life is permanently changed. Not because of a chronic disease, not because of heart disease, not because of diabetes, not because of osteoporosis, but because of food safety. So when you look at how missed opportunities can affect the quality of life for somebody in their older years, it's really worth the time to open the refrigerator or answer a question or advocate for your senior when it comes to good nutrition. Here is my contact information. There will be plenty posted for your use on the website eatwellwestmi.org. It will be there in a day or two, and you're welcome to use the materials as you see fit. Are there any questions that I can answer for anybody on senior nutrition? Well, I really appreciate your being here, and as a new senior, I would like for you to hear me tell my own story of eat well, feel good. Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm glad to be here to tell the story. We have lots of friends. Largest growing population in the country. We're in good company. Thanks a lot, folks. Thank you.